2,000 people lost their jobs, unfortunately, an 81 million loss for that business unit. So yeah, I feel that at the end of 2027, when enterprise agentic's out, and people with fragmented businesses, and they're like, oh, well, we've run a pilot, we'll run enterprise agentic. It'll go and do something like that and wreck so many businesses. So there's going to be some interesting headlines coming out. If you did get AI ready and you were able to deploy enterprise agentic at the right time, then you would be the one taking all the market share of your competition. And as they start collapsing, you can buy them for pennies on the pound.
Behind every value creation plan, there's a data problem nobody wants to talk about. Fragmented systems, metrics nobody trusts, and decisions made on gut feel dressed up as analysis. Welcome to the PE Data Guy. Each week, host Graham Crawford talks to the operating partners, advisors, and practitioners who are doing the work inside portfolio companies. If you care about what actually drives returns in the market, then you're in the right place. The PE Data Guy starts now. Ben Banks has spent 30 years working inside complex operational systems, and 18 of those leading global operations, integrations, transformations, and value creation programs, exit readiness, and operational due diligence across some of the most complex platforms in the market. The last 8 years working with Tier 1 private equity funds and their upper middle to large cap portcos. This delivery pattern recognition and hard-earned operational insights over 18 years has led Ben to build the Growth Engine, which is an operating framework designed to improve integration velocity, reduce the acquisition lifecycle cost and complexity, and build cleaner, more defensible exit stories from day one. Today, we're talking about why the vast majority of enterprise AI deployments are delivering no measurable P&L impact, what AI ready actually means underneath the slogan, why business coherence is actually the gating factor that everyone is mistaking for a data problem, and why the 12 to 18 months it takes to build the right foundation is the difference between competing when the enterprise agentic wave finally arrives or watching your competitors do it without you. Ben, thanks so much for coming on the show. It was great to meet you through LinkedIn, and something in common, like you're based over in York in the UK, which is where I went to school. So we've been to many of the same places together.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to be here, Graham. And I've known you for a little while now, but we've had some good chats.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Speaking of data points, the temperatures are soaring over there, aren't they? This month is currently baking in your brick houses.
Yeah, it's red hot.
Yeah. I was actually in Ireland for a little bit last week, and it wasn't quite as searing as it was in the UK. But even then, I think the last hotel I got in Dublin before I left had air conditioning, and I was like, I'm just going to stay in my room.
Yeah, I know the feeling. It's just not built for it, is it?
No, it's not built for it. And as you say, like, it happens so, at least historically, has happened so rarely that you can't justify the investment in the infrastructure.
Yeah, it was the opposite way when I used to live in Australia. So they have a short winter where it gets down to a freezing cold 10 degrees Celsius. It's not worth putting central heating into the homes, so it feels really cold. It's not, I mean, 10 degrees is almost summer in England or, Europe, but it just feels freezing cold in the houses. So they have the exact opposite problem.
Yeah, it's all about what you're used to, isn't it? Absolutely. Speaking about preparing for things, you just published a really fascinating piece on LinkedIn with a bit of a throwback reference to HD Ready for, we know when HD Ready televisions first came out before the broadcast technology quite caught up, and how we're kind of at the equivalent moment for agentic AI. So everyone's talking about it. We know this is AI coming up within 2 minutes of a podcast starting is very much the norm and not the exception these days. Boards are signing off pilots, like consultancies are billing millions. OpenAI and Anthropic have just spun up their own consultancy firms, and the magical, mythical for deployed engineers that they claim to have hundreds of thousands of. But what you're saying is if you're not AI ready, then you're focused on the wrong thing. What do you think people are missing and not doing at this critical moment in the rollout of this new technology?
Yeah, sure. So at the moment, there's a lot of pressure on CEOs and operating partners to be doing something with AI, or to be seen to be doing something with AI. And they're talking about the AI layer. And right now, AI is Gen AI, which is like ChatGPT, where you ask it how, what's a recipe for something, and it tells you. There's task level agentic, which is go out and get me some appointments or something like that, or manage my diary. And there's silo agentic, which is, imagine, for example, inside sales, which is run off a single CRM. Everything inside that CRM can be run, and in fact, that CRM probably has its own AI embedded within it. So that's where we're at with AI, and everybody's out there talking about it and saying, look at what we're doing. But nobody's saying, well, actually, we've taken a step back from this and we're looking at our operating stack, or our, as I call it, my transformation stack, which is the business model, the operating model, the systems, the processes, the people and culture, and the data. And I don't think there's anybody out there currently that's going out and putting out press releases saying, well, we've just looked at our business model and our operating model and we've redefined it ready for AI. And in doing so, we've learned that, because we had two sets of ERPs, we need to actually combine that, migrate across and get to one. All of the, I suppose, the bedrock stuff, the foundational stuff that you need to do to be able to run the next level of AI on it, which is enterprise agentic.
Yeah, when it shows up, and you're right. You're right about that point of two CRMs. It's a situation I see a lot, especially in PE where roll-ups are happening, and there's add-ons and tuck-ins and all the things that we know and love. Integrating two CRMs is not a copy and paste job. There's not a button somewhere that says take this and put it all in this other system. And certainly what my teams on the ground find is that there's something critical lacking in terms of good definition of data, good governance of data, good metadata, whatever else that could potentially make those things a little easier. And as you say, all of that is many steps away from actually deploying AI, and I think people are just jumping to the end, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's because today the AI that you have is what I call point solutions. So you can focus it on a tiny little point and it'll fix that for you. But where we're moving to is end-to-end agentic of a business, autonomous working AI. That's a whole different level.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think will happen to businesses who don't do this the right way? There's like one of the things I hate the most, Ben, is I call it transformation theater, and there's a beautiful slide deck. We're talking about this wonderful new world that's going to be there, but we're not going to deploy the resources or actually do the difficult change management work to get there. Is the same happening with companies who are very quick to talk about how AI forward they are, or AI driven they are, or even adding AI onto their company name, as I've seen a bunch of people do? How are those chickens going to come home to roost when they haven't done the real work?
So it's a bit of a, I don't know, it's something that narcs me. I think because I work in the business and I can look at something and tell straight away if it's operationally right. You can smell it, after working for years in it, you can smell whether something's right or not. There's organizations that when digital transformation was the thing, they were talking about how they're all, we have digital transformation, we're digital first. They're the same companies that are now saying, well, we have AI, we're AI first. But you can talk about something right up until we get to enterprise agentic, and then you've got to start walking the walk. And that means you have to have that stack that I told you, your operational stack. That all has to be unified and aligned all the way through. And the companies that are blowing their own trumpet at the moment, they're just not going to be able to talk their way around this. So they're going to run AI, enterprise agentic, and there's going to be a catastrophe.
The other issue that I've seen, even the companies that do claim to be AI forward, even companies that are aggressively or openly, as more seem to be the trend these days, saying, I'm going to replace certain elements of my workforce with AI. The mistake I see is they try and configure AI to replace a human rather than thinking in terms of workflows, right? And humans typically come packaged with similar skills, right? So, if you're going to have a marketing team, then you might need someone who's good at SEO. You might need someone who's good at content creation. You might need someone who's good at, downloading and interpreting the wonderful reports from GA4. And you don't get all three of those things necessarily in one person. I'm sure there are some full stack marketers out there, of course, but you don't normally get those three things in one person. So people focus on like, oh, how can I automate this person, then this person, then this person, when actually they should be thinking about the end-to-end workflow. And I think that plays back to the systems and processes piece that you talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think about something like quote to cash, from the point that your sales team's going out and quoting to the client, what happens all the way through the sales process, all the way through the operational process where you've won the actual bid and you're now client facing. If you're a tech firm, you're implementing the project into the client's firm. You're hitting your milestones, doing the billing, you're getting paid, you're recognizing the revenue for that, and so on, all the way through that process. So it's the process itself that will be replaced. So the doing of the process that will get replaced, and what that means to people. So in the transformation stack, I said people and culture. So people will, instead of being the doers, they will be the people that are the reviewers. So they will watch Enterprise Agentic, and if there's an edge case or an escalation or something that doesn't fit the main process, that will pop out of the process and go to a human to look at and to evaluate and to judge. And it's called human in the loop. The human will be there to provide judgment calls on things, to evaluate things, and to make decisions. So humans will still be needed, but they won't be the doers anymore. AI will be the doers, and humans will provide the judgment.
Yeah. We both operate in private equity, and I think it can sometimes get an unfairly bad reputation. I love working in private equity because of how focused on return on investment every piece of work is. That may seem cold and calculated from the outside, but it's about growing enterprise value. And yet, I've seen PE fall into some of the same traps as, corporates have as well, of just being very broad in their prescription of like, okay, I want my company to be more efficient with AI. So here, internal team, or here, consultant team, make it more efficient. Oh, and by the way, consultant team, you should be half the price because I assume you're using AI, so you could be more efficient as well. And it's very hard to do anything with a brief like that, right? When it's so ambiguous and all-encompassing, right? And I think it speaks to, again, as we'll keep coming back to, people not thinking about that stack, like, and people trying to think they can, this is true across elements of AI, I think, Ben, like from image creation to video creation to whatever, like to trying to build a SaaS platform. People like get overly read into the hype and think they can one-shot things. It's the same with digital transformation. Like some companies now think they can just one-shot digital transformation of like, here's my company AI, do your magic.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just not going to work like that because AI doesn't have the context or anything to do it with. So anyone who thinks they can one-shot something is a big red flag for me, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there is that. And you mentioned earlier on, I think you said activities. So taking over people's activities. And that's exactly how they say it in the press releases. So they say, we're now deploying AI and it's, we've closed more cases. They don't say if it's successfully closed cases or if they're just closing cases.
Yes.
Uh,
Shut this down, not worth it.
We've saved so many hours. We've made so many more decisions. They don't say if they're good decisions or not. And ultimately, they don't say, we managed work across this particular process end to end, and that drove up the revenue by X amount. That drove down the cost by X amount. And the margin as a result of deploying this AI is up by, 2% or whatever.
Yeah. Or even the other example that you see out there, I think Jack Dorsey did this of like, because of AI, we laid off 40% of our workers. You don't then get to hear like, oh, the whole place has gone to the dogs. Or you don't then get to hear, and I think this is what happened to X or Twitter, like when Elon laid off a big chunk. Like people are basically working 23 hours a day and sleeping in the office under their desks.
Yeah.
Like it's,
Yeah.
the full story and context is always important.
I'm sure you can talk to anybody that's used like just a basic sort of chat GPT Claude thing that, yeah, it does do things for you fast and you do end up doing more, but does it really move you forward or are you just building more stuff? I think that's the case.
Yeah, where's the quality and the value, right?
And actually, I remember recently, probably a few weeks ago, reading about this. I'll call it a mega corporation out in the world somewhere, and they were saying, oh, they've just won this amazing award for AI, which has helped them to improve activities and lower overheads and do more, all that type of usual activity-based stuff. And they even put a figure on it. So we've saved X $100 million. it's in the mid-range, so it's like four, five, $600 million. It's in that range through AI. And I thought, wow, for about 5 seconds. And I thought, how much revenue does this company earn? And I worked it back, and the AI saving was about 0.25%. I thought,
Yeah.
I thought,
And
wow, you could have probably done a tiny little, upgrade to the operating model and got 10 times that.
yeah, and how much do they spend on tokens as well to get that
Yeah,
0.25%? Yeah, that's always the question. I'm wondering, like I described earlier, like there's a trap that PE is falling into the same as corporate. Like, have you got any counterexamples of that, of places where PE is approaching AI differently to the way kind of more established or slower moving corporates might be?
I don't have examples because it's all screened. It's all activities, not dollars. We're not there yet. The AI doesn't do it. I've actually got one, but the thing is, you've also got to look behind it. So who benefits? So when they say, oh, we made this much extra money because of deploying AI, and then you see that they're listing for an IPO,
Okay.
and you think, ah, right, okay.
Yeah, the people with the shares,
Or
the internal shares are the ones that benefit.
or
Yeah.
if the PE fund is fundraising at the moment for their next fund, things like that, or if they're getting a business ready for sale, yeah, we're AI. But the one thing that they're not is AI ready, which is the infrastructure below that, which actually will make the difference.
Yeah, I know I've referenced this a few times, the whole circular funding thing that's going on between Nvidia and OpenAI, and like Nvidia's committing to spend money on OpenAI, and OpenAI's committing to buy Nvidia chips. This whole kind of circular revenue boosting that's going on, or projection boosting, forecast boosting that's going on, it's crazy. And I've seen like 90%, 95%, whatever else like floated out there by some, big and reputable firms, shows that the vast majority of AI deployments are not delivering measurable P&L impact. They might be delivering PR impact, but they're not delivering P&L impact. The headlines are full of success stories, and everyone's puffing their chest out and strutting around. Every conference has some sort of case study or whatever. But you've taken a hard position on this. Like, why do you think that's so misleading?
I think it's misleading because if you look at what the analysts are saying, for example, Forrester will say that 88% of all pilots have failed. And if you look at McKinsey, they will say that only 10% of pilots have managed to bridge more than one or possibly more than two silos or functions. Or, for example, sales and marketing.
I think the one I saw was MIT saying that 90 or 95% of AI pilots had failed as well. So there's
Yeah.
there's plenty of it around.
So back to the opening, CEOs are looking at the wrong thing because if pilots are failing, put your energy where it needs to be, which is getting the business and its foundations ready for when the real AI enterprise agentic comes out.
Yeah, and pilots are something that always you spoke about something that knocks you earlier. Like pilots are something that knocks me as well. Like especially from my past in corporate, people would agree to a pilot, like just to make it a loud, ambitious kind of tech-driven initiative. Go like, okay, fine, fine. We'll give you something. We'll do a pilot, but a pilot is just basically a waste of time unless there's a decision that's made at the end of it, right? I learned that over my years. Like, yes, we'll do a pilot, but we're going to structure a decision point in 12 weeks. This isn't going to be something that, and I think I see a lot of AI pilots doing the opposite of that and just kind of like floating 9 months, 12 months, no well-defined objectives that can measure the success of it, no endpoint, no decision point, no actual backing from the organization to do anything outside of the silos. So pilots themselves are something like, they're not a bad idea in principle, but you need to commit to do them, commit to a decision point, and then say, are we going to roll this out or are we going to kill it? Because the never-ending pilot was the bane of my life in corporate for sure.
Absolutely, and that's very well put, Graham, and something I hadn't thought about, but while you was talking through it, I thought, yeah, I mean, pilots really should be run like a project. So a scope, this is what it does, this is what it doesn't do, the bounding of that. This is the time frame for getting it implemented. This is the time frame for it running in BAU. This is the expected business case for, activities, for tickets closed, time saved, that sort of thing, but also tying it to specific P&L lines. and owners for those P&L lines in the business that have to say, well, this is actually contributing or this isn't doing a thing.
Yeah. And I actually listened to a different podcast yesterday where they talked about this, that actually, if you're hiring a consultant to do any sort of technology pilot, and of course the AI pilots would be the fashionable one right now, like if there's nobody inside the company who's going to drive the change, then you're kind of just wasting it, and it's just a lip service PR exercise again. Because if you don't have anyone who has either the skills or the bandwidth to pick the work up at the end of it and run with it, then it might seem strange for someone who runs a consultancy firm to say this, but look, you shouldn't do the consultancy in the first place. Like if there's no intent to continue.
Absolutely. And consultancy is such a broad word as well. I like to split that into strategy and delivery. And the strategy people can use AI to help them, build a better deck and make better insights. But the delivery guys, you have to do that as a person, hands-on. It's all about relationships and delivering something real. So typically when a strategy meets a business and the environment and the operating stack of the business for the first time, it just falls apart. And that's where the delivery person has to pick it up and do something meaningful with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of things that went wrong, you and I have spoken before about Zillow. So, talk to me more about Zillow, like what went wrong there and what everyone who's listening can learn from that.
Yeah, so Zillow Offers, I believe it was called, in 2021, they lost $881 million.
That's
So
a big
back
negative.
yeah. So back in 2021, it wasn't Gen AI, it was the model before that, which is called machine learning, which you link it with automation. And just to give you an idea, the machine bought 28,000 homes, of which 18,000 of them were kept in a backlog waiting to be renovated. And of them, 10,000 of them were overbid. And that's what led to the 881 million loss.
So they paid too much money for them, basically, and then
Well, I'll break it down into the transformation stack for you.
cool.
But the great thing about the Zillow one versus some of the other ones is that it touches every layer of the stack. So at the very top of the stack, you've got business model. So the business model was basically an arbitrage move. So the market's going up and they thought, right, we're Zillow, we have the website.
We've got all the data.
We've
Yeah.
got all the data. So we'll use that to look in all the hotspots and where the upcoming places are to buy.
Buy low, sell high, right?
Yeah. So that, makes perfect sense, right? But what they didn't bank on was, I think it was COVID actually, and the market tanking.
Yeah. None of us banked on that, did we?
Yeah. So at the business model end, they just didn't envisage negative arbitrage, and that was the problem at the business model. Now at the operating model, it gets a bit more serious. So you've got a front end machine which is using the Zillow data to say there's all these houses and go commit to buying them. So it actually made the purchases itself. And in the middle of the operating model, the next stage was Zillow had commissioned all these contractors to do the renovation works. But with COVID and things moved slower. Raw materials got more expensive. And then at the back end, you have to sell. So the market was cooling off. People weren't buying as much, but you've still got the machine up front buying at full speed. And not only was it buying, it was overpaying for all of the houses because it was going into a falling market.
That's just an interesting example because I've heard someone say that we should, instead of thinking of AI as artificial intelligence, think of it as amplified intelligence, and it can only amplify the decisions that you've got. So with this Zillow example, it hasn't got complete data, it hasn't got full context, it's making bad decisions, but because it's AI or machine learning in this case, it's doing that it's very quickly making bad decisions, and a lot of them, right?
Yeah, and confidently too.
Yes. Yes. Because it doesn't know the stuff you've not told it.
Yeah, exactly. It was at the operating model layer that everything really started to fall apart. But the layer below that is the systems layer. So there was this thing called the Zestimate, which is the algorithm that prices houses. And
Yes. Even without breaking down the algorithm, by the way, I've looked at the Zestimate on my own properties over the years, and I've never once thought it was right.
Might be some insight for you there, then, Mike.
Yeah, I always find it, and this might be something that was the root of the data issue here. Like I've always thought, well, that's very optimistic. Like if I actually tried to sell my house, I don't think I would get that, even if Zillow thinks it will. So yeah,
Yeah, maybe it's trying to push people into, oh, we can get this much for our house. And
yeah, I think so. Yeah, or maybe I'll sell because Zillow's interested in the market moving numbers, isn't it? Yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that. Yeah, it's back to what you said, the cui bono thing, like who benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. So the system itself could thereabouts price a house, but what it couldn't do is put the brakes on or use the throttle in its buying. So it was like flat out buying or nothing. And it was just flat out buying with the wrong information. So the next piece is processes. So silos, I already spoke about that. So you've got the machine up front buying, overpaying, you've got the contractors, raw materials going up, but they're slowing down their work because they can't get to the work because of COVID. So now you've got the timeframes dragging out. I imagine that Zillow have got loans on all of these homes that they've bought. And what that means is that instead of getting the positive arbitrage, it's stretching out and going negative. The hold is getting longer, getting more expensive. When they finally do get to selling, nobody wants to buy.
Yeah. Longer, more expensive holds, and no one wants to buy. Sounds a lot like private equity, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the problem with the process is there's no feedback loops from any of these into the front end. So if you've got the contractors and they're saying, well, things are slowing down here, putting a feedback loop into the front and saying, let's just buy 1,000 at a time, it would have changed things. And if you've got a feedback loop from the sales happening and the rate of that would have slowed things down.
Yeah, so it didn't even know it was making mistakes.
It was just going for it. And that's silo thinking. That's the silo thing. And that's why you can't be fragmented. So
yeah.
People and culture. So the whole business unit was built around this machine brain doing what it does best, things that humans can't even do. So nobody dared doubt it. Nobody
question it. Yeah.
Question it. So they just left it doing its own thing. Nobody used their judgment to say, prices are going down, but this thing's buying at a phenomenal rate. And we can't process the renovations, but it's still going. And then
it must be right.
Yeah. So that's the people and culture piece. And then you move into the final layer, which is data. And to my knowledge, so I don't know if you ever do trading, like stocks and shares and things. So if you put something on the 1 minute graph, price is volatile, very volatile.
Yeah, very volatile, yeah.
But if you put it on a 1 week, a 1 month, or a 1 quarter graph, it's very smooth and slow moving. And this is the problem with the data. So apparently the data was renewing every night with the fresh sales and everything like that and fresh prices, but it was smoothed so that when the market went up, it didn't see the turn for such a long time and it kept buying into it and it was going down and it was smoothed. As far as I know.
And interestingly, I mean, I don't know how significant a contributor this would have been in the model, but by overpaying for a bunch of houses itself, it was actually artificially inflating the prices of the sales that it had access to, because all of their overpriced sales were already in there as well. So the mistake then compounds, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and I think it was overpaying by up to $30,000 per house for nearly 10,000 houses.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't need an AI model to tell me how expensive that is.
Yeah, because of fragmentation up and down every section of that stack.
Yeah, wonderful. Like, what happened to it? Like, did they can the thing, or
they canned it? They closed it down, and 2,000 people lost their jobs. Unfortunately,
Ooh.
881 million loss for that business unit. So yeah, quite sad.
That sounds like something that should have had a pilot with clear success criteria and a good look at the data before deploying it at enterprise scale.
Well, it's that kind of thing that I feel that at the end of 2027, when enterprise agentic's out, and you see people with fragmented businesses, and they're like, oh well, we've run a pilot, we'll run enterprise agentic. It'll go and do something like that and wreck so many businesses. So there's going to be some interesting headlines coming up.
Yeah, there's going to be people who've cancelled big SaaS subscriptions as well. Like, I don't know where I stand on the believer scale or the believer spectrum about this SaaS apocalypse, But I am sure there will be companies that have ditched big SaaS platforms, built something themselves in-house, and it's like they built it on, it's the straw house, right, from the Three Little Pigs, and
Yeah.
a little bit of wind's going to blow and suddenly they're going to be sitting there with no houses.
Yeah, I saw a thing last week. Funnily enough, I was writing a post for LinkedIn, and my post had all of the future modes of what might happen. And one of these modes, I called it the vibe coding of businesses. And then just last week, posts came out that Bain are actually doing this. So they're looking at a SaaS type business, and then they're vibe coding it and saying, right, this is how it kind of works. And obviously, they'd have to do a proper job to,
Like reverse engineering it.
yeah, with vibe coding. But they'd have to do a proper job to then make it institutional grade. But it gives you a feel for how the business runs and how to make it better, how to make it worse. And then you've got the decision, should we buy that company that's just come on the market like that? Or should we spin one up ourselves, vibe code it, and then build it for real?
As well as the, build our own or buy one, they're testing the susceptibility of the company to AI disruption as well, like by effectively modeling it themselves of like, oh, well, like if we can disrupt it with AI, then I'm sure there's a bunch of other people, smart people out there who can also do it. And therefore it's not necessarily the best investment because it needs to have a moat, right? And I get it's a bit like the big boom in Amazon FBA, the fulfilled by Amazon, where there was people, you know, spinning up their own businesses, sourcing stuff on Alibaba from China and whatever else. And the smart cuckoos at Amazon just watched the data and said, well, what's going really well, whatever it might be, we're just going to then create Amazon Essentials version of that because we've got far more purchasing power, far more brand power. We can put it straight to the top of the search results without having to pay for keywords. And we just run all these people out of business now that they've established there's a market for this. It sounds very similar. Next thing I want to come on to, and I'm a kindred spirit with you on this. AI readiness, you keep saying it isn't a technology problem. I say this so often to clients, to people in talks, on podcasts, to anyone who'll listen. It's a business coherence problem. And I think, when my team show up with clients, often the biggest, and I set this expectation up front before we even sign a statement of work, it's like, we do not have a secret menu of business intelligence and data tools that you don't have access to. Like, because sometimes the expectation is like, oh, all you need to do is get some licenses for this, buy this, move on to this database, and all your data problems will be solved. Some consultants operate like that. I don't know, just not my thing, because it's so rarely the problem that you're not on the right technology, and it's so rarely the problem that you're that a mid-market company is even pushing the boundaries. And this also surprises clients. The first thing my team does in the first 2 weeks in the business is seek to understand the business, right? What are you trying to do? How do you make money? How do you make decisions around here? What is the company strategy? Because without that, you can't make good technology recommendations without that. And so that's my version of business coherence. Like, how does that match up with yours, and how is that framing different, from what the market at large is saying?
Well, it's a very good question. So, and I could talk for days about this because it's what I do. So, coherence. So, I run transformations, I run merger integrations. And for business coherence, running a post-merger integration is something that gets you 70% of the way to being AI ready. And that's the stack that I talked about, which is business model, operating model, systems, people. The thing about that is if you imagine that, let's say, the business or an enterprise agentic business is a Formula One race car, and you need to run that on a track. Well, the track needs to be Formula One grade. So it needs to be, you can't run it on a track that's, part tarmac, part dirt, part gravel, part water.
Yeah, I don't know how Formula One car do with all the potholes around near my house. Probably not
Exactly.
great, right?
Exactly. And that's essentially what business coherence is. If you're going to go into enterprise agentic and you're going to run this Formula One car, you need a Formula One track to run it on. And there's an argument, and people say, yeah, but you could just deploy governance or runtime encoding to keep things on track. Not really, because that's like FIA rulebook and the marshals. So usually the the rule book keeps things standardized, whereas the marshals pull you back on track once you've flipped off into the barriers.
Yeah, no one wants their
Mile
business
an
to
hour.
flip off into the barriers, do they?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot to be said about business coherence, and everything drives top down. So I saw a thing the other day that made me laugh. That YouTube's business model. So they own the platform, but they don't make the content. You have to make the content, and they sell that content that other people make to companies. So they get paid from that. But if you want to not watch the adverts, you have to pay for that as a viewer.
Yeah, as I do.
So you're getting paid twice for that, and you can shape the content that you want made by rewarding certain types of content and demonetizing other types of content. And that is a brilliant example of a business model, I think. And then if you take things down into the operating model and the systems, everything flows from there. But if you try to do it from the bottom up, so you're a data guy. If it's sat at the I'm not saying it's the bottom level, but it's the last layer. If you can go into there and clean up the data, it's only going to get dirtied again because the things above it are going to consistently make it dirtier. And by fixing these top down, eventually you get to a point where your data coming out of the bottom is much, much cleaner, if not fully clean. And you don't then need to keep running remediation cycles. And that's when you know that you've got it right. But if your data's still dirty, there's something in that stack that's not quite right somewhere.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And often the implementations we do with clients are pointed exactly at that problem, right? We can do data quality checks, identify, do data profiling, identify how much, this column is missing 8% of entries when it should be a mandatory column, whatever else. And you're right, you can fix it manually, but if you don't fix the cause, then it's just gonna, the sewage pipe is gonna run into the data lake still and turn it into, whatever that turns it into, right? So yeah, I absolutely agree, and I think it is a very common misconception because, as I said, like it often surprises clients. So like I go in and like the first question I'm not asking is like, get me a log on to your Oracle, right? It's what are you trying to do as a business, right? What are your objectives? How are you measuring them? How are you making decisions? Who have you got? What are they doing? How they're reporting success or failure to you? Those things are far more important because until you understand those things, then yes, as you say, fixing the data is a temporary thing, a very temporary thing. And the other thing, by the way, which is a bit of a personal bugbear of mine, is all of the some of them vi-coded, all of the platforms out there. And this is the other issue I think with the vibe code wave. If people try to jump straight to software, best case, they end up having to reverse engineer consultancy services because they don't understand the market that they're trying to serve or the industry that they're trying to serve or the businesses that they're trying to serve. And they have to then basically reverse engineer a service offering into it.
I've seen some of those things on LinkedIn where it's like comment AI in the comments below and we'll give you this McKinsey pack, and then you get it and you run it into your AI and you look at it and you go, that's not how it's done at all.
And certainly not by McKinsey. So what goes wrong? Like, I know the answer to this, but like for the audience's sake, like when an agent hits fragmentation in data, like what are some examples of that and what actually happens as to the business?
Yeah, so I mean, I gave you some big examples at Zillow there, but what happens in enterprise agentic is it can either stop completely or it can fire on the wrong data point. So it can, I suppose it depends how you have set up your AI and whether it's customer facing, but imagine putting people into the wrong category, 1, 2, 3, 4 million people into the wrong category because it's looking at the wrong data point, and then sending them a letter that isn't quite nice, like we're cancelling your subscription because we didn't receive your payment this month, something like that.
Even I've had a few emails like that actually, not specifically that one, but yeah, I've had a few retraction emails come out, presumably from AI agents getting things wrong.
Yeah, so it will either stop completely if you're lucky, or it will completely go ahead and
Or it'll guess, right?
yeah, guess. Yeah. And linking that into fragmented companies that are companies that were acquired and never actually integrated, that can be really bad in PE. You have companies, specifically in things like professional services type businesses or wealth type businesses, where they're consolidators of consolidators. So you buy a company that's already bought 20 other companies. So you buy company A, it's already got 20 ERP
Yeah,
systems inside it.
can be very messy.
You go out to buy 20 of those, and it can be very, very messy.
Yeah, 20 times 20 is 400 ERPs.
Yeah.
That's not a project I want to send a team into. Yeah, and it's interesting this concept of integration as well, because this might be a bit of a PR play, but like you can do the roll-ups and the tuck-ins and claim that you've integrated these companies, but actually in a number of cases, they just continue to operate as siloed entities that just, you can add the revenue and profit numbers up at the end of the year, but there's no true integration there because they're operating basically as separate businesses, and you haven't realized the efficiency of doing the integration, which is the reason PE does integrations and tuck-ins in the first place.
Absolutely. And I mean, you can spot these businesses because they're always boasting about revenue, but they're not they're not boasting about margin so much.
Yes, please. Let's just do revenue multiple, not EBITDA, please. I've seen a bunch of that, and actually, this is. I'd love your take on it, Ben. Like I do diligence work through my teams. Understanding the data layer and how it's informing decision making can actually be a really good indicator of how to correctly price a deal. But to my surprise, throughout 2026 at least, I've had far more inbound about companies that are a couple of years into hold period, enterprise value is not growing. And I think like what's underneath it is typically all of the stuff we've been talking about. And that's probably contributing to the extended hold periods that we're hearing, the continuation funds, the, rebranding funds is something else, but just carrying on. I agree with you that there's some chickens to come home to roost in the next few years for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I built the growth engine. So it's an operating system designed to buy businesses. As soon as you buy them, you put insights into the business to measure and understand the baseline of what the main platform is, and look at potential acquisitions through that lens. Also to understand what the business model and the operating model of your own platform are, and to look at potential acquisitions through that lens, so that you're buying companies that are better aligned to what you are, so that the integration is going to go smoother. And there might be some changes to either the operating model of the main platform or to the business that you're buying. But as you're going through and integrating them, you get better and better, and it becomes quicker, faster, easier, cheaper to do the work. But you're taking the complexity out of all of the businesses that have just been aggregated because you're integrating them onto one single platform. And by doing that, because you've done right up front, you've done the insights and you're measuring and tracking all the important numbers all the way through integration, transformation, and value creation, and doing it again and again and again in a cyclic way, you can prove what uplift and what value you've added onto the business, what it cost you. And you can see the deltas there, and you start building the exit story from the very start. But what you're doing while you're doing that is you're taking out the complexity, you're taking out the leakage, you're taking out all those late nights where people are consolidating reports because you're working across multiple systems. You're just making it easy. But the other thing is that you're making the business AI ready as well. And if you're looking to sell in the next 12 months and you're not AI ready, so if you don't have that transformation stack sorted out, businesses are going to be discounting you. They're going to be looking
hugely
and saying, well, first of all, you're not harmonized as a business, you're not unified, so you've got leakage, you've got complexity, but actually you're not ready for enterprise agentic.
Yeah.
So there's a big discount there. And
because we're going to have to pay to do that work ourselves, right? As a PE firm.
Exactly. Well, it's not just they've got to pay to do that themselves. Imagine if you're buying a company in 12 months from now. It's going to take 12, 18, 24 months to do the work. Meanwhile, all of the competition that were ready, and not many of them are, but some will get ready, they've just set off at speed with their new toys because they got prepared and they got ready at the right time. But any businesses coming to market in 12 months that are not ready, you've got to question, would you want to buy it? Because you're going to spend that next 12, 18 months getting them ready. And meanwhile, your business has just collapsed because your competition's just taken all the market share from you. And if you did get AI ready and you were able to deploy enterprise agentic at the right time, then you would be the one taking all the market share of your competition. And as they start collapsing, you can buy them for pennies on the pound.
Yeah, yeah. I totally agree with your hypothesis here, and I think there's going to be a lot of companies getting overtaken from behind, right? And I'll go back to the people and culture thing in your stack, because I think that this is a big thing that I'm seeing with AI native companies. And I started my company 2 years ago. Like, it's an AI native company, right? And I think many other companies who started in the last 2 years have been AI native. It's much easier to do in this place and this time to build an AI native company than it is to change a company that already exists that isn't AI ready, right? And as a result, like those conversations can be difficult, because they'll be like, oh, we need to automate workflows, we need to move people around, we need to potentially lay people off, we need different skills in here than we've currently got. And I think that's the thing I see holding mid-market firms back a lot. We can build whatever fancy data and technology stack they like. They have to have a team to run it, right? They have to have a team to run it, and this modern era is going to require some different skills that are different than the ones they've currently got, and that for a leadership team creates hard conversations. And humans are naturally slow to do hard conversations. I think there's going to be a whole bunch of businesses like overtaking from behind in the next few years, but we will see. If I want to, you gave a great rundown there of what it feels like when you do it right. If, imagine you're talking to a PE firm who's got a portfolio company that's like the one you described, they're already in, right? They're in whole period. It's not AI ready. They realize that now. Like, what's the first thing that you think they should do to sort of take the step on the right road?
So I have built on LinkedIn a diagnostic, which is a 60-second diagnostic, which you don't need to be a transformation director or operations director. You could be anybody in the business. Just they're simple questions, and it asks a question at each layer of the stack. And you place where you are at one end of the scale or the other, or somewhere in the middle. And at the end of that, it will give you a quantitative view of where you are, where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are. But more importantly, it will also give you a qualitative view of these are the things that you need to do or need to be looking at to move forward to make yourself as a business AI ready. So it takes 60 seconds to actually step through that and get a result. And so rather than putting your head in the sand, just take the 60 seconds, figure out where you are. It's been built in such a way that you can take it to your leadership team and say, look, I ran this. I'm not the expert here, but can one of the experts take this test and agree if there's something here that we need to look into? And if there is something that they need to look into, and if they'd like to have a chat to me, then I could either work with them face to face on site, or remotely. I could do a remote session to ask questions, get evidence, and look at where they are across the stack. And it's quite loose in the diagnostics. It'll typically say somewhere between 12 to 18 months or 12 to 36 months, depending on your rating. But personally, I'd be able to give it a much closer view, because I don't know how complex your business is.
Of
I don't know
course.
if you're a consolidator of consolidators.
You need to build some business coherence first, right?
This is it. This is it.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up, if people want to take you up on that offer, like, where's the best place for them to come find you?
On LinkedIn, Ben Banks, but if you could put a link below to my name and to the diagnostic, that'll just make it simple. You don't need to put an email in, just put your name in and take the test, 60 seconds, and it'll give you an idea of where your business sits.
Magic. Well, Ben, thanks again for another great conversation, and I'm sure we'll continue to have them with or without a podcast running. So really appreciate you sharing your insights with the audience today and continuing to share your kind of thoughts with me. And I look forward to staying closely connected with you as this wave of enterprise agent comes to these shores and washes up on both sides of the Atlantic. I think it's going to be a very exciting time to be building a company, and very exciting time to be doing the type of work that we do.
Absolutely.
Let's keep rocking it.
Thank you very much, Graham. It's been very enjoyable. And it's been a great podcast. Thank you.
All right. Take care, Ben.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye. Thanks for listening to the PE Data Guy, the place where private equity meets data. Please forward this episode to your favorite private equity friend. Thanks for listening. See you next time.